So there is a very popular quote by a self-help speaker whose name is Jim Rohn. So I said this to somebody and they were like, Jim Rohn, the sports guy? Not that guy. This is Jim Rohn, R-O-H-N. And one of the quips that he always teaches people about is he says this. He says, you are the sum of the 5 people that you surround yourself with. The 5 people that you are around most are influencing who you are. And the thing that we actually are going to look at today is why he's right. Where Proverbs is going to tell us that he's right, or something really close to what he's saying is right. And we're going to try to answer the question of like, how much do the people that we surround ourselves with actually affect us? And Proverbs is going to give us a pretty clear answer to this question. And this is what I actually want us to do today. When you see what Proverbs tells us about the people around us and how they help us or they drag us away from wisdom, it's important to know that the thing that we're always looking for together as a body is wisdom. And wisdom is kind of this, like, we get this weird feeling about it sometimes. It's not this like ethereal drug that we take. It's actually a tangible thing. You have it in varying degrees or you don't. And the thing about wisdom is it's never something that happens accidentally. Nobody ever just wanders into it. It actually takes diligent work to find it. And throughout the series, I want to remind us of this. We've actually used this definition of wisdom. This is what wisdom is and it looks like in our lives. And this is from Tremper Longman, a famous commentator on the book of Proverbs. He says, wisdom is just the skill of living. It's the skill of living. It's a practical knowledge that helps one know how to act and how to speak in different situations. Wisdom entails the ability to avoid problems and the skill to handle them when they present themselves. So you could probably tangibly see what that might actually look like in your life. And wisdom is the thing that makes us good at life. If you lack wisdom, you're probably going to be bad at life. And you bring this to earth and just put this into your own situation. If there's things in your life that you're failing at, maybe the thing that you need is wisdom. If you have relationships or marriages that are failing, maybe the thing we lack is wisdom. And wisdom, what we'll see, is something that God gives very freely to his people, the people who stay close to him. And it's right there for the taking, for those of us who want to do the work to get it. But today, we want to look at one particular aspect of our lives and see how that affects us in our search for wisdom. So here's what I want to do today. I actually just want to look at 3 themes regarding wisdom that come up in this text today. And these 3 themes are this right here. This text is going to tell us today, how do you actually drift from wisdom? It'll be clear in telling us how do we find wisdom. And what we need to do is actually move out of this text into one other part of Scripture to answer this question of how to live with wisdom. Because you will probably start recognizing a tension as I'm going through this. But just remember, we're going to get there at the end. So here we go. Here's the thing about Proverbs. Proverbs is a book that is written from somebody who has wisdom to the youth who lack it. And it's written to them so that they can find wisdom and they can avoid foolishness. And the immediate assumption that this places on all of us is that we as human beings are never completed people. We're all on a path. We're all headed somewhere. And the path that you are on is actually going to determine where you end up in life. So the path that you're on right now is going to, if you could see that, you would say that's where I'm going to end up in 40 years. And it's going to make you kind of ask the question, is this the path going to get me to where I want to be in 40 years? And Proverbs is going to constantly remind us to pay attention, going, what path are you on? Pay attention to that. And the goal is just for us to avoid foolishness, and then you get to find wisdom in its place. In our text today, sometimes preparing sermons is actually more difficult when the text is so clear. The Hebrew here has no surprises at all. When it says, what it says is what it means. So when it says like, whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. There's no surprises in that. It's very clear in what it's telling its audience. It means that the people that you surround yourself with are likely going to play a role in your path of life and where your life ends up. And if you constantly surround yourself with fools, you're going to end up a fool. Just plain and simple. Like you've just all seen Marvel movies before. Like if you hang out with Tony Stark long enough, you will become an Avenger. That's how it always happens. And that's kind of what Proverbs is telling us. Like who you are hanging out with is who you are going to end up being. This is actually just pretty conventional wisdom. This is what Jim Rohn said earlier. You're going to become the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And Proverbs is going to have this character that shows up over and over and over in this book. And the author is saying, watch out for this person. Sometimes they're called the fool. Sometimes they're called the simple. Sometimes they're called the scoffer. But they all fall into the category of foolish. They're all foolish. And Proverbs will say that these people actually, they're all around you, but they're people who don't know how the world works. And they're on the path of foolishness. And this kind of scary thing about them is the farther they go down the path of foolishness, the more certain they become of their opinions, and they actually get to a spot where they can't even be talked out of their foolishness anymore. And all they want to do is just influence people to become foolish with them. So Proverbs will tell us that simpleness, if you don't watch out for it, is actually going to lead to foolishness. And Proverbs is begging you to watch out for these people. And it begs a question in our lives. Like if you had to answer this question, who actually influences you? Who has a say in your life? Whether you've told them that they do, or maybe you haven't told them that they do. Who forms you? Who do you spend the most time with? There was and I'm talking about this next part too, because like I think there's a category expanding thing that we need to think about here. But there was a American Psychological Association released a study last year, and they were paying attention to how screens and specifically social media are affecting human beings. And they released this data, and it said teens on average, spend about 5 hours a day on social media. 5 hours a day. And we know that social media is bad for us, and it's especially bad for like the youngest members of our society. And then Yale Medicine, following up this study, released a second one that said, according to this research, in the study of American teens ages 12 to 15, those who used social media over 3 hours a day, so if the average is 5, those who use it over 3, that means mathematically almost everybody, they face twice the risk of having negative mental health outcomes, including depression and anxiety. 3 hours a day. And I'm saying this because like when I talk about the people that we spend our time with, the thing that we need to expand and have a new category for is the people we spend our time with are not always people we can touch. Sometimes they're the people that we are interacting with through screens. And like, if that's true of teens, that's scary, but adults aren't much better. Like I know I'm an adult, and I see this all the time. We're in the same boat. I was once on vacation I went to see this very famous fountain, and my wife was with me, and we went to this fountain, and it was like so packed, and all we wanted to do was see these like stone dolphins that were like shooting water out of their mouth or something. Someone told us it was really important to go see this thing. And we get there, and there are lots of people here that are trying to take photos. And one of the most interesting things that I saw there wasn't actually the fountain itself. We kind of sat back from it, and we were like, that's just too many people to interact with right now in a place where I don't speak the language. Like, I'm just going to get pushed into this fountain if I keep going. So we kind of stand back and we're watching. And one of the things that we see is this one person is dressed up incredibly nice, like not normal clothes that you would just wear out on the street. And they're trying to take a picture. And what was so fascinating about it is this person was like, I think it was their partner who was trying to take a picture of them, and they were snapping at them, They were like yelling at him. They were getting really frustrated and annoyed that all these people were getting in the way of this like perfect photo in front of this famous fountain. In reality, as I watched it, I was like, this person is not having any fun at all. And but this crazy thing happened. As soon as the camera went up, it was like the annoyance and anger, gone. And like, beautiful photo. I was like, I can see how it works now. This is what our culture is doing. The anger just like miraculously dropped. And you see what like is actually happening here. These are the people that we're spending time with. And what it tells you to believe is like, if your life is beautiful, if you look like this person, if you dress like this person, you're going to be happy and you're going to be satisfied in life. But in the 5 minutes that I got to watch of this whole thing unfold, there was not actually much joy there at all. Like, I wouldn't say this person was happy. In fact, I was like, you seem kind of miserable. And what is kind of scary about this is like, when we let this kind of worldview influence us, what that's doing inside of us is actually building foolishness. You're actually buying a lie when you do that. You're buying a lie and you're funding them with your eyes. So like, this is just a plea. It's like, ask yourself, who do you actually give your attention to? Who do you give your time to? Who is influencing you, whether that is like in person or through your eyes or through your ears? And are they a person that is going to lead you to wisdom, or are they in it for a different motive? One of my favorite pastors always says this little quip. He says, it's not if you are being discipled. The right question to ask is, who's discipling you? Because being influenced and discipled is just as natural as breathing. It happens whether or not you want it to. And his point is, someone's influencing you. Completely unavoidable to not have that be the case. And as like a parent, this is what actually terrifies me quite a bit as a parent. And I'm always asking the question, and I freak out about this stuff. I'm going, who's my kid spending the most time with? Like, am I one of the most influential people in their lives? And I'm about to have a teenager, and I know that is like going to end very quickly. And there's a window here where I need to like do some influencing. And we'll actually talk more about kids in the coming weeks as we look at how do we actually be parents and what does Proverbs tell us about it. But it should make you start asking lots of questions around like, who's influencing me? How am I influencing these people? And I've seen this go bad in my own life. I remember in my 20s, there was a point when I was in public education, I got really into politics. And I'm not, what I'm about to say, I'm not saying politics are bad by any means. I think politics are incredibly important. I think you should vote. You should be involved in that. You should have influence on the world around you to make this world better. But I remember there being a few people that I was paying very close attention to. And the thing about them, and I kind of liked it at the time, they were really angry about our political realm. Really angry. And what they did is they would actually mock people who they disagreed with. They would lean into ad hominem attacks on them, talk about things that actually didn't have anything to do with their like political working. And what I noticed a couple years into this is like, oh my gosh, I'm actually starting to think the same way. The first thought that start popping into my head are like, how do I make fun of this person and belittle them so that I can seem smarter? It made me get emotionally invested in a way that was way out of balance. And like, the truth is, like, what I was doing is letting my emotions outweigh the wisdom that God is telling me to hold on to, right? Because instead of mocking my leaders, what God tells me to do is that I should pray for them. Instead of like attacking them as a person, what I should do is honor them. As a Christian, what I should do is be involved in politics, but be able to have a much greater faith in Jesus than any person in this world. Because Jesus can fix things right. People haven't quite got there yet. But it was turning me into an angry person. And in the end, like when the veil dropped, I was like, the thing I had completely forgot is that I had to realize that Jesus had died for those people that I was making fun of and that I was mocking just as much as he died for me. Like that lack of wisdom turned me into a hypocrite. And maybe like politics just isn't your thing, but like I see this in sports, right? But it is like I just gave so much power to these angry talking heads, and they influenced me in a really unhealthy way, and it led me down a path of foolishness. And one thing that I think we really need to pay attention to, and I think this is a way that our culture is influencing Christians and leading us into foolishness rather than wisdom, is when we are all trying to answer a very simple question. And this question is about our identity. Like if you have to answer the question and go, who am I? Who am I? Really, I guess it's actually a pretty complex question, short question. But if you have to answer the question of who am I and what am I worth, our culture is going to influence us to answer that question in a few different ways that will lead you into foolishness. And this actually comes from Charles Taylor, who is a Canadian philosopher. And but Taylor says there's actually two ways in our cultural moment that we answer that question. When we answer who am I and what am I worth, there's two ways we do it. The first one is what he calls a traditional identity. This is probably familiar to lots of us. But a traditional identity helps us answer the question of who am I, what am I worth? And the way that we do it is through our traditions, our traditional set of values, our family values. It's how our society influences us. It's actually an outside-in view of identity. So the people around you are the thing that tell you who you are and what you are worth. You like form to what culture and your family are telling you to do. And how well you do that will help you answer the question. So like when culture and families say things like, you should get good grades, you should go to school, you should go to college, that's what we do. And when we do it, our identity actually becomes fulfilled. We actually are achieving our goals. And then it also helps us form a morality. There's a question that people will have to ask sometimes, and they will say like, well, I have an opportunity to cheat on my spouse, but I'm married. A traditional identity is actually the thing that helps them answer the question of whether or not to do it. And the reason they don't do it is because they know it's taboo. Culture, their family, their church is saying, you should not do that thing, because that would actually be a break from our traditional values and your identity, and culture's telling you not to do that. So you don't do it. And if all that sounds right in your life and you're like, yeah, that checks out, I do look to approval for people around me quite often, you've probably been influenced by a traditional identity. And then there's a second category. There's a new kind of wave moving through our society right now, and it's what Charles Taylor calls a modern identity, which is a little bit different. So a traditional identity is an outside-in view. A modern identity is what would be inside out. The idea is that you personally and individually decide who you are. Like whatever you just say, this is what's going to make me feel good, then you go do that thing. And the more you are like true to yourself, the more your identity is fulfilled, and you can answer that question. And if you put it back in the same category, instead of not cheating on your spouse because of culture saying not to do it, you actually would just do it, and then you would say, this is what I wanted to do, and that makes it the right decision, and everybody else around me now needs to get in line and follow me and what's going on inside. And Taylor says these are the two ways, but both of them are different ways of answering the question of who am I? And it's one of the most critical questions that every person has to answer. And the people around you are actually going to influence you in how you answer that question. If you are surrounded by people who hold really deeply to a traditional identity, you are going to work hard to be successful and to make the people around you like you. You're going to make them approve of you. On the other hand, if you're around people who hold a modern view of identity, you're going to do whatever you want, and you're going to tell yourself that you're just being true to yourself. And I get it. I feel really influenced by both of these things because I feel like as I was like studying this week, I was like, oh my gosh. Taylor's saying, Taylor's saying you're either influenced by one or the other. I was like, why do I feel influenced by both of these? This really sucks. But like a significant temptation of mine is like, I have a problem with buying nice things that I don't always need. I don't know if you can relate to that. But what I'm actually doing when I do that is I'll start believing that like, if I can get that nice thing, I'm actually going to start getting the approval of others around me. That's going to make them respect me. And my traditional identity, like the traditional identity of our culture, is influencing me to do that so that I can have the approval of others around me. On the contrary, a modern identity also feels like it's influencing me because there's a thing inside of me that's going, you need that. And when you get that, you're going to be happy. And I just like do that all the time. But here's the thing. Truth is, both of these forms of identity are foolish. They're both foolish. A traditional identity is going to crush you at some point because at some point in your life, you're going to fail at something. You're going to fail at something. And when you fail, there's no category for how do you cope with that. People will disapprove of something that you do, and your identity is going to crumble. A modern identity, at some point, is going to become incoherent in your life. Because what happens to everybody is you're going to have competing values that are going to show up in your heart. You're going to have to, like if you don't have kids yet, this is what will happen. You're going to go, I want to be a great parent. I also want that job. And how well, there's going to be a give and take here. If you want to be like the most successful person at that work, that probably means there's going to be a sacrifice in your parenting. Not all the time, but this is how it's happened in my own life. On the contrary, you might want to be the best parent, and that means you make sacrifices in what you're able to do at work. But a modern identity doesn't have a way to help you get through that. What do you do when there's competing things that your heart wants that are just totally inconsistent with one another? Because there's no categories for like a contradicting desire that we might have. But this is the thing, like when we let the people close to us form us, we start believing and buying into this, that like, if I do that thing, if I get that thing, if I live this way, I'm going to be satisfied and I'm going to have, but in the end, both of them crumble because they're foolish. And Proverbs will tell us this today. In the text that we read, it said, make no friendship with a man given to anger, nor go with a wrathful man, lest you learn his ways and entangle yourself in a snare. Trusting in a treacherous man in a time of trouble is like a bad tooth or a foot that slips. And this proverb is talking about like picking up anger from people. The truth is, this proverb is going to say you can pick up anything from anybody. And when we let the foolish in, what happens is we will start to learn their ways. You actually will trap yourself in their snares. A foot that slips means that your life will actually become ineffective. You're going to just stumble your way through it. If you have a bad tooth, you could be having the most fantastic meal of your life, but the pain of that tooth is going to ruin the meal. Like, fortunately, though, and why we're here today, and the thing that we're going to talk about for the rest of this time, is that Jesus offers something really different than what our world offers us here. So, like, keep moving to our second point, which is how to find wisdom. And Proverbs so far have been telling us just to watch out. He's saying, like, watch out for fools. Don't fall into those traps. Don't be wrongly influenced by the people in your life. But he's going to say, you got to find something else, something that'll lead you to truth. How do you get a skill for living to be good at life? Where do you find confidence and hope? How do you make an identity for yourself in something that's not going to crush you? And the good news is that Proverbs will tell us that wisdom is right there for the taking. And if you remember from our last series that we did, there's a separate character in Proverbs that the author will call Lady Wisdom. And the author says that Lady Wisdom should be one of the people in your life who influences you deeply. You should constantly be in her house. You should be eating her food that she makes for you. You should drink her wine. You should be her friend. Proverbs 9 says this about her. Wisdom has built her house. She has hewn her 7 pillars. She has slaughtered her beast. She has mixed her wine. She has also set her table. And she has sent out her young women to call from the highest places in town. Whoever is simple, let him turn in here. To him who lacks sense, she says, come and eat of my bread, drink of the wine I've mixed, leave your simple ways, and live and walk in the way of insight. So wisdom is there. Wisdom is speaking to everybody, calling from the highest places in town. And she says, come in here and eat, be my friend. In this house, the thing that you're not going to find is foolishness. You won't find it here. There's no traps. There won't be anything that's going to lead you astray. In this house, the thing that you're going to find is hope. You're going to find comfort for life's failings. You'll actually start finding success. And you're going to find a new confidence that's never been there before. In the same sense, Proverbs will say this of Lady Wisdom. In Proverbs 8, it'll say, blessed is the one who listens to me, watching daily at my gates, waiting beside my doors. For whoever finds me finds life and obtains favor from the Lord. But listen to this. But he who fails to find me injures himself. All who hate me love death. What Proverbs is telling us is that if you want to avoid drifting into wisdom, if you want to avoid drifting into foolishness, then the thing that you need to do is run as fast as you possibly can towards Lady Wisdom. You become her friend. And I want to just pause here for a second and talk about what's actually going on, because the Bible takes this thought, and this is so cool, what happens. We know that Lady Wisdom is not a real person, right? This is just a personification of God's wisdom. It's a real thing that's just represented by a fictional character. And Proverbs 8 will also say this about Lady Wisdom. It says, ages ago, I, Lady Wisdom, was set up at the first, before the beginning of the earth. When there were no depths, I was brought forth. When there were no springs abounding with water. Before the mountains had been shaped, before the hills, I was brought forth. Lady Wisdom is old. So God's wisdom was actually present before the beginning of the earth, before anything was created. And this is what the followers of Jesus knew to be true. And they start going, oh, I see what's going on here. I see what's happening. This is it's just like the veil drops for them. They put it all together and they go, Lady Wisdom was a personification of something real, God's wisdom. And this real thing was there before the beginning of the earth. Well, John, one of Jesus' disciples, sees this very clearly. And he says this in the opening lines of his gospel in John 1. The very first words of John's gospel are this: in the beginning was the Word. Sound familiar? And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Okay, the Word just turned into a he. See what's going on? He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. So, okay, wisdom is present at the beginning, before the creation of the earth. And John uses the Greek word here, which is logos, which means the word of God, or the principle of divine reason, creative order. So what logos means is wisdom. And John has a really particular point here in this text. He's saying, I know exactly who that is. I know exactly who it is. I know who wisdom is. Lady Wisdom was just a personification, but I know that's no longer the case. This wisdom and reason are here, and now they actually came in the flesh, and now they are a real person, and that person is Jesus. You see how verse 2 changed that from word to he because Jesus himself was the wisdom that everybody was looking for. And here's what Jesus does that's just so different than anything else. And maybe like you are just a person who is not so sure about Jesus. You've probably heard about it a ton in our culture. But I want to just talk about what he actually offers here, and let's just rewind that identity question. I think what Jesus offers is better than anything our culture would offer us. It's better than a traditional identity. It's better than a modern identity. You see, in both of those two that our culture will tell us to buy into to answer the question of who am I and what am I worth, here's the thing. It's all about what you do. It's all about how well you do it and how you earn it. It takes a lot of work to be able to answer that question in a way that you'd probably be happy with. Whether you just gain that from yourself or maybe you gain that from like success or approval of your family, there's always going to be this thing in the back of your mind that's going, if I fail, it's all going to fall apart. There's always going to be a fear that you end up crushed. But Jesus and Christianity becomes so unique in this. And I don't know of any other option that says this. While everything else, all these other forms of identity are telling you, achieve, 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 do, then you'll find it. Jesus says something completely different. He just says, receive this. Just take it. Receive it. And he's saying, you actually are already worth something. You're already worth something. So you get to take this, and I'm going to take all of the failure. I'm going to take all the shortcomings in your life from you. 2 Corinthians 5 will say this. It says, for our sake, this is Jesus, for our sake, Jesus made him to be sin who knew no sin, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. So Jesus became sin, even though he knew no sin, so that in him we could have the righteousness of God. So the way the gospel works is that God goes, I'm actually going to take all of the sin and failure from your life, and the thing that I'm going to give you in place of that is righteousness. It's not actually a fair trade. It's kind of funny. But do you see how that's different than anything else? God is saying that like through Jesus, he's actually interested in taking everything about you that's not worthy of approval, and you get righteousness instead. You become as righteous as God, and craziest of all, what you get is God's approval, because now you have his righteousness. What kind of identity does that give you? Compare that to our other options. This one meets your needs, and most of all, it's one you can't lose. Like, who could take that from you when the creator of the universe is going, I approve of you? No matter what's there, no matter what you've done in this life, no matter what things I actually had to take from you, I approve of you. Like, could anybody even look down on you if that's true? People can do it all they want, but in the end, like, there's a truth that sits inside of us that helps us answer the identity question when we just know that God approves of us. God made the universe, and he just looks at us and he goes, nope, you're with me. Like, who could hurt you in this life if that's true? And the last thing that this brings us to is this tension that I mentioned at the beginning, which I think we just need to discuss. And this is our third point of like, how do you actually live with wisdom in this world? And why I want to talk about this, because I think it's easy to look at this text and say, the people, like there could be this like fear-mongering thing where I'm going like, the people around you are influencing you and you need to avoid them. So like, if they don't go to church, don't be their friend. That's not at all what I'm saying. At all. Because what happens when we start believing that to be true, we're going to go, oh my God, I'm just going to go to my room, I'm going to read my Bible, and I'm only going to go outside when a Christian knocks on my door, and that way I'm going to be protected in this life. That's actually not what Jesus wants us to do. And Jesus, who brings wisdom to the world, would actually pray these words over his disciples. In John 17, this is known as the high priestly prayer, where he prays for his followers. And this is what Jesus says. He says, I do not ask that you take them out of the world, but that you keep them from the evil one. They are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. Sanctify them in truth. Your word is truth. And listen to this. As you sent me into the world, so I have sent them into the world. That's Christ's prayer for us. His prayer is not that we would be like recluses, that we would actually go out into the world and surround ourselves with all the people who need him just as much as we needed him. The point is that we actually go out into the world and share the wisdom of Christ with anyone who listens to it. And what that means is that many, many, many times you are going to be surrounded by what Proverbs will call the simple or the foolish. And that's okay. It's totally fine. But what Proverbs warns us against and asks us to remember is just the question of who's influencing who. Jesus' prayer for his disciples is to keep them sanctified. Sanctify them in the truth, that your word is truth. To keep them close to God, but to be around the world, to be around people who are not part of the church. So like just two really quick points of how this applies to our lives. The first one is this. Proverbs is asking us to remember and recognize that there are people around you who are influencing you. And it's unavoidable. The title of this sermon is this: you will become who you walk with. You're going to learn their ways. So think about the 5 closest people to you. There's a difference in having a companion and a friend. But those 5 people, are they bringing you closer to Jesus and wisdom? Or are they a barrier? And for those in your life who you know just bring you closer to Christ, you keep them there. And you nurture that relationship, you build that relationship. Those are God-given gifts of friendship. And you need them. Because the danger is you also can't do this by yourself. Left alone is probably the worst of all. But here's the second thing. Not only does it mean that you are influencing people around you, and this is more for just Christians in this room to hear this, it means that you are being influenced by people around you. But here's the second thing it means. You're also influencing people. And it should make you kind of pause for a second and go, how am I doing at that? Am I causing people to stumble on their path? What identity are you pushing on people? What are you making people around you believe will satisfy them? Are there things in your life like gossip and bitterness and anger that just become contagious to the people around you? Or do you get people to just run to Jesus as you're running to Jesus? That should make us pause for a second and just reflect on how we're also doing that. If you read our text today, you could be the angry man who's making other people learn your way. And there's a danger there that we need to watch out for. And on top of all of this, what we do is we recognize that the thing about Christ, not only does he give us a new identity and approving of us, but Jesus also is really interested in being our friend. This is crazy to me. And Jesus would say these words to his followers in John 15. He said, "No longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what the master is doing, but I've called you friends. For all that I've heard from my Father, I have made known to you." The God who made the universe would have every single right, and nobody would doubt it for a split second if he wanted to say, "You are my servants." We would all go, "You seem a little better than us at this life, and that sounds fair to me. I will serve you." He could have done it, but it's not what he does. Instead, he says, "I'm going to call you my friends, and I'm going to make things known to you." You see, like, Jesus is not interested in being stingy with himself or the good gifts that he gives to his people. That's mind-blowing. And that's what we should be looking for in the people in our lives who are closest to us. They're the ones that should be pushing us closer. They should be calling us friends, getting us to find Jesus as our friend. The people closest to you should be people who also have Jesus as their best friend. And in no way is it saying don't be friends with those outside the church. It's actually the exact opposite. It's saying be friends with them, but always be asking the question of which path to life are they asking me to get on? And that lets you know if they should be influencing you to that capacity or not. But for us, like, we just get something totally unique here. We get a God who called us a friend, a God who came to us. He gave us a new identity that was just in his own, like, goodwill to approve of us. And he even died for us so that all the things that are around us that would hurt us, to make us like uncomfortable, those are like no longer an issue. And Jesus came as a friend, and his goal was just to set us free from all the identities that were actually going to try to crush us in the end. And that's exactly what he came to do, and he did it. Let's pray. Father, God, we want to just ask for wisdom, that your friendship is clearly known to us, that gives us practical skills for this life, that we are able to just avoid foolishness. So God, we ask to be equipped as we search for wisdom, that you lead us on that path, and that our lives are blessed when we do find it. And we ask that in Jesus' name. Amen.